What does it take for us to build workplaces and a world that is fit for the future? A question that plagues many a leader and many an organization. How do we learn from our experiences? Are we shaping ourselves and our workplaces to be fit for the future? What does it take to invest in people and nurture success? How do we ensure that our investments in diversity, equity, and inclusion are delivering to the intended goals? Are we seeing the very invisible responsibility that most employees carry, that of being caregivers? What does it take to build a caregiver friendly workplace? Are leaders caregivers? What can leaders and organizations learn from caregivers and their experiences? How do we create safe spaces that enable inclusion? Is this something that is holding, especially women, back from the C suite? We are delighted to bring to you a series of conversations around the idea of building future fit corporates. Maya John, who is the Chief People Officer for Verse Innovation. But I would like to tell you a little more about Maya, before which let's welcome her. Hi, Maya.
Hi, Bhavana.
So, Maya is the Chief People Officer of Verse Innovation, India's leading local language technology platform. Verse is the parent company behind Made in India platforms, Daily Hunt, local language news platform in 14 Indian languages, Public Vibe for hyper local news, and short form video app called Josh. Verse became India's first media tech unicorn in December 2020 and is currently valued at $5 billion. A seasoned professional, Maya has over 20 years of experience and has been a part of the startup digital media space for the past 6 years. Her expertise is in the organization and talent development, providing strategic HR business support for building and scaling teams, working closely with executive leadership teams. Before Verse, she worked at GE in healthcare business in various HR roles in business partnering, org and talent development, and prior to that with Saskin Communication Technologies, and Intervac in the US. She represents Verse on the Customer Advisory Board for LinkedIn. She's a founding member of the Center for Gender Equality and Inclusive Leadership at XLRI, a first of its kind in a B school, and is a committee member of the alumni team Excel for Women. She won the Women Disruptors 2022 award in media and was recognized by XLRI in 2022 for her contributions in the field of HR and towards the cause of increasing impact of women in the workforce in India. She's from a beach and backwater town, Alapi in Kerala. She has earned her BTech Computer Science Engineering from MIT Manipal and MBA in HR from XLRI. She is also an MBA in Marketing from Santa Clara, California, US. Is married to Jaxie and they have 2 kids, Warki and Johan. I love that introduction. What would you tell us that introduction doesn't cover?
Well, I think that's the corporate introduction. What it doesn't cover is real life, which
Yeah.
happens behind the scenes, which happens behind the screen, which is
Yeah.
the many roles that we all play. In my
Yeah.
case, it's a daughter, a mom, a daughter-in-law, a manager to my team,
Yeah.
a friend, my classmates, college mates, all of that. So I think the many avatars that actually play out in real life, which is way beyond the corporate introduction.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No, thank you for that. I really enjoyed reading that long list of accomplishments and what a stellar professional you are. We've had many conversations, and I would like for you to start with how you relate and associate with the idea of future fit corporates on one hand and caregiver Sathi as well.
No, I think our first conversation, Bhavna, on caregiver Savati, I know we've spoken a lot before that as well, it was very, very eye opening because
Hmm.
I came into that conversation in a very cliched way of a definition of a caregiver.
Hmm.
In my mind, it was okay, you have an elderly person, you need to take care, or you have a young child and you need to take care. So these were kind of very, in my mind now, in hindsight, very stereotypical definitions of a very boxed version of caregiving, of definition of caregiving. Um, it has been very, very eye opening to speak to you. And in reality, as you said, all of us are caregivers in
Yeah.
different contexts and different circumstances. Um, Maybe the circumstances even change through the day, not even through the year.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that was very, very eye opening. And the second is in the overlaying that in a corporate setup, in a company setup,
Hmm.
it multiplies and the complexity increases, right? Because you have different team members all working together, all handling and battling probably their own caregiving responsibilities. And where do their individual responsibilities come in, and how and where does a company bring in caregiving for the caregivers? So yes, it's at its most minimum, it's been extremely eye opening, Bhavna.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. You know, you've worked with some incredible organizations, and today you lead this large setup. And I'm sure you have seen a lot of changes. I think it is very important for us to start with what are some of the trends that you have been seeing around not just workplaces, workforce, as well as workplace cultures? If we can probably draw that picture, then we can get into more details around caregivers or caregiver friendly workplaces.
Sure. So I think one really eye-opening thing and very, very important one in my perspective is, there's always been this unsaid power equation between an employer and an employee.
Yes.
And it was assumed and it was kind of taken for granted that the employer holds more power than the employee in any circumstance. Um, I think that has changed forever. And COVID was that seminal moment or seminal years that changed that equation forever. Because I think it opened the eyes of both parties.
Well said.
Earlier, prior to COVID, I would say, let's say, I'm having a bad time at home for whatever reason, right? But then you come into office, and from the moment you step into through the doors of the office,
Yeah.
uh, you are required to be in office mode, which means work is the only thing that is in the horizon. There are many things to be solved, things to be handled, people to be spoken to. In my role, of course, it's people, every day, every hour. So if there's something going on that I'm handling or dealing with, I need to push it to the back of my head, keep it there till the workday finishes, and maybe I need to deal with it again. I think COVID changed that, because for COVID, what happened by just by design, I mean not
Mm,
by design, but just the way it was, is that corporates got a view of what really happens in the day-to-day life of the employee.
yeah.
And for an employee, I think it was very eye opening to look at the level of responsibility that a corporate holds as a collective, for
Mm,
the team that makes up the company. Today, I would love to say that, and I hope that's the reality, more than less, which is that it's now more balanced, more
mm,
a partnership of equals, where
mm,
there is, I don't need to, my different avatars that I play don't need to be left at the door and then
yeah.
picked up in the evening when I leave. I'm hopefully able to bring all of that, be
Mm,
open about all of it, and figure out the nice equation that can work between all of my responsibilities. So I think that's one thing that was, it was held as a cardinal rule, and that has, completely changed. I think the second is earlier corporates recognize, okay, you have, I would say, okay, Versailles has 2,000 plus employees, right? And that's what it is. But now it's not that. When I say 2,000 employees, I'm also very, very conscious of the ecosystem of every employee, their families, their support systems, their partners, their children, whoever comes into their space. So, decisions that we now take as a company is not boxed into, okay, I have 2,000 plus employees and I need to solve for the employee. It is keeping in mind each employee's support system and are we solving for it, correctly. So, one very obvious space would be, let's say, medical insurance.
Yeah.
Actually, when we looked at the last 3 years, 4 years of, okay, when we insure an employee who's an individual entity, uh, where is that insurance goodness being leveraged?
Yes.
And our data said that 60% of all the claims of our employees are for their parents.
Yeah.
This year, for example, when we were renegotiating our corporate medical insurance, we had to keep that in mind, that that is where bulk of the spends uh, of the employee is going towards. So, I mean, as I was saying, when we looked at our medical insurance policy usage, for example, for the last couple of years, 60% of or more of the coverage benefits are being leveraged for care of elderly parents.
Right.
And so, as an organization, we leveraged or we were conscious of that data and that usage of a particular policy, in this case medical insurance, to then frame what it should be for the coming year. So
Right.
I don't know if this level of consciousness used to be there before. So probably if you're renewing your medical insurance policy, it was looked more as probably just, okay, just our procurement team will just deal with that and just renew it.
And
Uh,
get better prices.
and get a better prices, better deals, whatever it is. But I think this whole thing of, it's not just ex employees, but their entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And if you need to do good by them, you need to ensure that you do good by their entire ecosystem as much as possible. So, yes, I think these are two aspects in my mind that have changed, and I don't think we'll ever go back to what it used to be. It's changed forever in a sense, for good.
What I hear you say is that analytics and data has formed a big part of what HR does, and it is valuable to be able to look at it in order to keep the overarching definition of what HR does or
Yeah.
what an organization does, which is that we think about an employee's overall well-being, and in order to do that we get into details.
Yeah.
uh,
I think one more aspect I would add is, um, earlier, let's say you had a particular policy.
hmm,
That policy would apply to every single person in the company.
yeah,
Now, more and more, we are realizing that this one size fits all approach that we've had forever and ever,
yeah,
as companies,
yeah,
just doesn't work. It's not practical. It's not, why have a policy if it doesn't enable the employee, right? I mean, then why bother having one? So I think the other core principle, which used to be held as, gospel truth, is not, working anymore. Acknowledging that one size doesn't fit all has
yeah.
been a big eye opener as well, and that is now applying in various areas of work.
So tell me a little more about that, because that makes me very interested. Because, at one level, the definition of policy is here is what will be the standard. A lot
Correct.
of times I've heard that, don't throw the policy book at me, or, let me throw the policy book at you because this is what is going to apply to everybody,
Correct.
because, that's the standard. And now you're saying that policy per se can be designed in a flexible way,
Yes.
that it can take into account individual personal circumstances. How fascinating. Say more.
Yeah. So I think, again, just getting practical, definitely one needs economies of scale.
Yeah,
So it can't be hyper personalized, or at least we are not in a situation to get to that yet.
right,
So there is a baseline that, yes, does apply commonly, hopefully, practically for everybody. But
right.
beyond that, we are going towards, so most of our policies are okay, there's a baseline that applies across.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then you have options and choices
Yeah,
that you make basis your circumstance and your support systems.
right.
Again, if I go back to medical insurance as one,
Hmm.
we have, a base coverage that is there for all employees and immediate family, but then we also have optional top ups
Yeah.
for at varying degrees and varying amounts depending
Hmm.
on what is your home situation. So the other thing we've also learned the hard way is
Hmm.
not to assume that we know everything about the employee and what they are dealing with, and
Right.
that use that lens to solve. So our approach is, of course, this one size doesn't fit all is one, and the second is we take care of the people who then need to take care of many
Right.
others,
Yeah.
so because that's in our ecosystem, that's the best we can do. And
Yeah.
they know best, right? Our employees
Yeah.
know best what and how, they need to do, and what they are dealing with. So that giving some space also, that hey, we're not assuming that we know everything,
Right.
neither do we want you to tell us everything, because every person would want to
Right.
have their space of what they want to come and bring into an organization, as kind of declaring what they do and what they need to deal with versus what they would like to keep private.
Hmm. Hmm. So, tell me, does that impact a policy like leave as well?
So leave also, as I said, for us, most of our policies have this baseline, and then there's a flex element where you
Okay.
flex as you need. As
Right.
a company, we also recognize that a downtime and a
Hmm.
time of no email, no work, no calls is
Yeah.
also important. So once a year, we actually switch off the
Hmm.
entire company,
Oh,
laptops down
wow.
for a week plus. And we've been
Hmm.
doing that for the last couple of years. And the feedback that employees have come back with is amazing, because they're like, we get that one block of time which is totally ours, where the entire company is off. So there's no question of, I'm not sure what's going on here, or I missed a meeting, or some email, or some escalation. So that's also been, I mean, we keep trying different things, but that's also been very, it's something we hadn't done a couple of years back. Again, something we started post COVID.
That's fantastic, quite innovative, I have to say, and worthy of mentioning. Maya, what I'd like for you to help us, when you were talking about the workforce changes, or you were talking about respecting that people cannot leave parts of themselves outside, I was reminded of a lot of management literature that has come up of late
Hmm.
around bringing your whole self to the work, having psychological safety, and having a sense of like collective responsibility at the workplace.
Yeah.
um, I would like for you to give us a sense of how you have witnessed the role and participation of women in the various organizations that you've been a part of, that you've led, and how has that shifted?
So I will start with the basics of, I think the best work I have ever seen come out of teams are where there is a multitude of ideas,
Right.
there is agreement, there is disagreement, and there's also, kind of a healthy mix of um, things that can be put into, a solutioning for whatever is the problem statement. So in that mix, gender is a very important one because every gender brings their unique view and unique perspectives into problem solving.
Right.
A spread of age is also important. A
Okay.
mix of people from different parts. I mean, we're an Indian company primarily, so different parts of India has also been important.
Yeah.
So I'll zoom out that a good mix of teams has always resulted in better solutioning and better impact and outcomes than a very bland team, like on any aspect, whether it's gender, whether it's age, whether it's from a particular part of India, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we have been focusing on all of these.
Yeah.
So if you look at the mix in the company, we have a good mix of fresh, young, new professionals who are new to the workforce, have their own ideas, bring their own energies. We also have experienced leaders who've gone through many different business cycles, and there's a certain wisdom that they bring in of experience and tenure. So that's also in the mix. Uh, does it all nicely blend together harmoniously all the time? No. It takes work. It takes a lot of communication, and there's sometimes the two steps forward, one step back happens, but collectively there's that we want all of these ideas to be in the company. So if I take the gender scale, the other piece is now, the recognition of many genders has also been part of our journey. And we even in our declarations, for example, employees have a choice to declare gender or genders,
Mhm.
or say that I don't want to declare. So that's also there. So now those were the little bit more tactical parts. But coming to the role of women, yes, uh, definitely it changes the equation when you have a good mix of men and women and other genders in a team. We've done a fairly good job of scaling that up and making sure we have a good mix across our team. But I will
Right.
let you hand on heart, at the very top, it's bad. We haven't been able to move the needle. Uh, at every instance, we try, and we'll continue trying. Um, but yes, our overall gender diversity is 30% women and 70% men.
Right.
It's not just a statistics. We've worked very hard to get there.
Yeah.
So every time we have a role, we have a mixed slate that we look at. Of course, the best person gets the job. But even if you don't look at a mixed slate, then where do you end up, looking at good choices? So yes, Bhavna, it's been a slow and steady journey, but it's been a very purposeful one so far.
I hear you, Maya. It's a lot of hard work, and there are lots of other factors, right? And I appreciate what you said, that gender diversity is but one form of diversity. The
Yes.
goal for an innovative organization is to have good ideas, is to have a good representative culture.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not possible to have all kinds of representation, and you need to have some practices that bring in different perspectives or
Yeah.
have the flexibility to bring in different perspectives. One
Correct.
of the things that we have consciously been working very, very hard on the longest is bringing more women who think differently. Also, very important. It is important to get women who think differently from men and are not like more of men
Right.
into boardrooms and into decision making positions. I want to emphasize on the effort that is put in terms of encouraging or building this pipeline, but experiencing that it is a leaky pipeline to the top of the
Yeah.
decision making. Yeah.
Correct.
What have been some of your observations and experiences?
So, if I take women specifically, one of the things that we've noticed over the years is that this cohort experiences the most dissonance between what happens in office and the roles that they play at home.
Okay.
So, like, I could be chief people officer versus innovation.
Yeah.
But when I go home, maybe I'm required to be the chief dinner making officer or elder care, CEO or whatever it is, right? So I think the struggle I see, especially in India, is that within a corporate, within an organization, we have progressed faster on gender equity than we have in our communities.
Mm.
So that friction, that struggle is the prime reason that I see for the women cohort. And that level of friction I have not observed in any other cohort. There is
Mm.
friction always, right, between what roles and avatars you bring to work versus what you do outside of work. But
Yeah.
this cohort has the maximum level of friction. So the women I've seen make it work are
Mm.
the ones who are able to strike a good balance between and balance. Sorry, is I think a wrong word, but a good kind of whatever combination between all the roles that they need to play.
Yeah.
Versus others. And it's a tough one. It's a daily battle, I think. And it can be exhausting, it can wear you off. And that's where we see the drop offs, right? It's like, it's just too much. It's just too much
Yeah.
to be a young mom and be, all the roles that one has to play and be an executive in office, etc., etc. So I think that level of friction in this cohort versus any other cohort is the highest in my observation. There are many things that are happening both in the community and in corporate that are helping to ease this friction, and it's
Yeah.
getting better and better every year, which is very
Yeah.
very encouraging to see. Like flexi work, equal leave for maternity for both partners who care for a child, adoption leave, so there's so many things that are coming in to make it less friction, make the friction less, but friction still exists.
What an insightful and what a lovely way to say this. That I was just trying to understand. I'm the boss at my workplace, and I have I can direct a bunch of things. I can get things done in a certain way. I can demand certain things, and the same woman, when she's at home, may not have the same experience,
Correct.
and we know
And
how important.
this is all in the span of a 12-hour day, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
It's like, if you're constantly shifting gears on the car, it's going to have an impact.
yeah,
So shifting gears is strenuous. And what a beautiful insight that this shifting of gears on a daily basis is likely to lead to friction and dissonance and burnout.
yeah,
And perhaps that's the reason that a lot of women choose then to say that, you know, let me give myself a break.
yeah,
And then, all the investment that we make in making sure that girls are educated and put
yeah,
into the workforce and are becoming independent and decision makers, etc., etc., can fall short. So, what do
yeah.
you believe is some of the things that organizations or leaders in organizations can do in order to support? It is a transition phase for both men and women as we try and establish gender parity both at work and in our social systems. So, what can organizations do?
I think one is people who lead organizations,
Yeah,
the consciousness and the sensitivity to recognize that people in the companies that they lead
yeah,
play multiple roles in and out of office. Acknowledging that, I think, is the first step. Um, and if the leaders who lead these organizations don't acknowledge that, then this topic ends there only, right?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
it's what it used to be. So and it's very nice to see, the leaders of today have come a long way.
Yeah.
There's so much of openness, there is so much of positivity, and there's so much of recognition of talent,
Yeah.
irrespective of age, genders, where you're from, what language you speak, your accent. Just I think what India has seen in the last couple of years is just that shining talent, and
Yeah.
that helps ease out a lot of other things as well. So I think leadership consciousness uh, makes or breaks this topic, this battle.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Second is for talent to shine through any cut you're trying to put on people, right? That has been very, very, very nice to see, especially in the startup space that I exist. I've been existing in the last 7 years. This is wonderful to have seen that.
Mm.
Um,
Right.
so that's one. I think second is for things that happen in the organization to reflect the roles that people play. So, for example, if I need to step out of office today for something that needs to be attended to at home, I shouldn't feel like I
Yeah.
have to, you know, figure out how to get that approval. It
Yeah.
should be a natural, like, yeah, yes, got it, you need to do that, and then you're back.
Yeah.
So I think the immediate managers of an employee
Yeah.
make a big difference in the day-to-day life of the employee.
That's right.
So the level of openness of a manager to just say that, hey, I have a fabulous team. They do what they do. Sometimes they need to do this and that and the other, and we'll make all of this work. So I think communication is required. A lot of communication is needed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, assumptions are made. Both for
Yeah.
men and women, assumptions are made, which is very
Yeah.
dangerous. So I would
Yeah.
say more communication, over communication, all of that is also needed, which organizations can foster.
Yeah, yeah. I would think that new situations keep coming in most organizations that are unanticipated and that have, that are new, and that require the leadership to take a step back and say, "Oh, we have not done this in the past. What are we going to do?"
Yeah.
So, could you tap into your experience and think of an anecdote or an incident when something surprising came up, and you needed to recalibrate how you were as a leadership team or an organization and say, "No, we really need to change this."
Well, the first thing that came to mind when you were asking this question is, when the first instance of COVID's impact was starting. So,
Okay.
classically, we've been a company that's very much in office. All
Mm,
discussions are had face to face. I think
right.
one Zoom account, that the founders used for, investor discussions and all that. So that's how in office we were, and
Right.
that's the mode that the company's been in for years.
Right.
And the most, decisions that required heads to come together, minds to come together, could only be done in person. That
Yeah.
was like, there was no other way. Um, I remember the first instance of that somebody might be exposed to COVID, might
Okay.
be at risk. Um, that was that was a big, moment for the leadership team, and we said, employee safety comes first, and that
Right.
means that we go home, and in a span of 12 to 15 hours, for a company that was in office for so many years, we
Yeah.
had everyone go home and work
Mm.
from home. We didn't have staggered, like, okay, so this team will go first, then after 2 weeks this team will go, because we said it's employee safety. It just doesn't matter what roles you play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we didn't know how to work remotely.
Yeah.
We never, so that's a muscle that we had to build. And the
Yeah.
fact that, like, let's say we're looking at hiring a very critical role,
Yeah.
taking decision on that role holder
Yeah.
without meeting the, a person in, the candidate in
Yeah.
person. And all
Yeah.
these were like never done before. So I think one was circumstance, but I think I'm happy to look at how we evolved to adapt and survive and thrive and all of that. So I think this openness to just acknowledge that there are new things that will come that we've never handled before, and acknowledging that we don't know anything about it as well, and let's collectively figure out solutions, has been extremely eye-opening. I just never thought we would be that company. We would always be in office and we would be doing same things a certain way. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's one instance.
Thank you. No, thank you for sharing that. I think work from home is something that has always been one of the accommodations that have been offered to especially women who return from maternity, to say that uh, you have the flexibility to work from home. But COVID also highlighted the fact that work from home has its own challenges.
Yeah.
So I want you to talk a little bit about what your experience with work from home has been, and what have been some of the challenges. Many people, many leaders indicate that the best an organization can do, and the most foundational thing that an organization can do, is offer flexibility to its team members. And work from home is something that never existed, but now in modern day and age uh, is a significant element of supporting individuals who may have varying caregiving responsibilities in their careers, right?
Yeah.
What has been your experience around work from home, both in terms of enabling and challenges?
So if I put the pure, work mode, work output, productivity, etc., etc., we have done a detailed view of all the roles that exist in the company
Hmm.
and what does it take to do that role. So how much of, let's say, human interaction is needed, how much of cross team brainstorming is needed,
Wow.
cross functional work, how much of uh, uh, strategic brainstorming thinking, etc., is needed. So on a couple of different parameters we have looked at roles a bit clinically, right? Like, what does it take to do this role? So,
Right.
one thing that really popped out to us, which we weren't aware till we did this exercise, is there are a set of roles in the company that is location agnostic, like, because
Right.
it is well processed, it's repeated stuff. um, there is already a very clear SOP on how things have to be done. There is very little cross team collaboration that is needed. So
Hmm.
it was very surprising even to us that about 40% of the roles in the company
Hmm.
fell into that. So
Wow.
by virtue of the role, we made those roles 100% work from home. The roles. So whoever was doing that role then ended up in a job that was 100% working from home.
That's
This,
incredible.
this was the first flavor we put on it, because I think the natural tendency on this topic is to go towards, okay, what do people need, and somebody needs flex, somebody doesn't. But we said, let's start with the role itself. Let's be very objective of what it takes to do that job. Now, if I take my role,
Hmm.
okay, I don't think I'll fool anybody if I say that I can do this role 100% from home. It's about people. It's about emotions. It's about reading between the lines. It's about what's not being said, body language. Like, there's so much in this role that practically can't be done 100% work from home. So that was the first lens. So that, 40% of the org, the roles in the org fell into that naturally, and hence those became 100% work from home roles. They continue to be 100% work from home roles. Now we came to the rest of the teams and the rest of the roles, and it was very, very apparent that all the other roles, 60% of the roles, required a mix of thinking time, which is probably alone time, and interactions, collective brainstorming, etc., etc. So there was no way that we, hand on heart, could classify that role as 100% work from home, because it
Right.
wouldn't work. It
Yeah.
wouldn't deliver the result that the role has to deliver.
Yeah.
So then we did a lot of brainstorming on, okay, how do we have a nice mix of this? So the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that was very eye opening for us was, if you and I work together on a project, and
Mm.
I come to office and you're at home,
Mm.
the other way around, then both of us are missing out a part of this effectiveness of the job.
Yeah.
So we see, when we are in office, we need to all be in office. Otherwise, there's no point.
Yeah.
And when we are not in office, nobody needs to be in office,
Yeah.
because it's most of it. So for us, it was that we are 100% like this, where we are virtual, or we are
Yeah.
100% at our desks, at an office space, and working. So that's
Yeah.
where we have leveled off. I think it's different for different companies, maybe different depending on the kind of work. But today we have, as I said, 40% roughly work, 100% work from home, because the roles are like that. And the rest of the roles, we are all in office 3 days a week together. So those days are defined and we are all in office together. And we've tried different things, and this now is for us what's working best. So you get that downtime, alone time, thinking time, coding time if you're an engineer, etc., separately in the week. And then when we are in office, we're all there together.
So, how do leaders connect with the remote workforce in terms of their emotional well being or in terms of their well being in general, or
Yeah.
everything else that you said about body language and reading between the lines, etc., for the remote workforce?
So I will start by admitting that we haven't figured out how to do that the best.
Mm.
Because again, at the end of the day, I can only see you in a box. I can at best, try and read off of you from what I see. But there's
Yeah.
so many things that going on in your personal space, or
Yeah.
in other parts of your role, that as a, let's say, as a manager of a remote employee, I don't have insight into.
Yeah.
And so our biggest worry is that we don't have all the data points when we are taking decisions on where, or we are making we having a, deciding a point of view on something or somebody. um, but that continues to be a challenge. I'm not going to say that we have figured it all out.
Yeah.
And there is a little bit of this out of sight, out of mind. So it
Mm.
takes a lot more work, a
Yeah.
lot more effort, and a lot more structure to be
Yeah.
connected. But
Yeah.
that's, for me, structure and connection are, they kind of don't go together. Connection should
Yeah.
be fluid, but then
Mm.
it needs structure. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
we're not there yet on fully figuring
Mm.
things out.
Yeah. Well, I would think that some of the things will evolve and we will figure out. And the more we talk about these things, the more we share best practices or some of the
Correct,
ideas across organizations,
correct, correct.
we will figure something out
Yeah,
over time.
yeah.
These have been very, very insightful, Maya. What I would like you to talk about is how do you believe that organizations can truly be innovative and can nurture success? In order to be resilient to things that can happen, that can surprise you. Certainly, I really hope we don't have another pandemic, but there are many challenges always.
Yeah.
What can organizations do to be innovative and fit?
I think one superpower that is there that we really underutilize is the power of listening.
Mm-hmm.
Because more and more, as we were saying earlier, there are things that come for solutioning that have never ever come for solutioning. Meaning, there's no context, there's no reference, there is no playbook, There is no kind of, okay, we did this, we did that,
Precedence.
precedence. So I think listening is one that helps towards solutioning, and not just listening to the obvious people or teams, but listening beyond. So, for at our end, for example, we take a lot of effort to keep connected with peers in the market, in the
Yeah.
outside ecosystem, in other startups, for example. What's
Right.
happening, what are they working through. There's always learning in somebody having done something very differently that is actually working well. So openness to adopt. So one is, I think, listening. Second is, I think, the openness of the leadership team of a company
Right.
to admit that they don't have all the answers, and to
Hmm.
also be open to seeking answers from anywhere. I mean, we've seen some brilliant answers and solutions come from somebody who's just joined the organization maybe a year back, or somebody who just has, let's say, 2 3 years of work experience. So all those classical definitions of wisdom, and you need a couple of gray hair, and all of that also is important, but it can also come from very different spaces.
Yeah.
And third is, at the end of the day, I think, especially post COVID, people are looking to work in a company that there's a peace of mind. You're not worried about, um, do you have to stay in the office till your manager is at his or her desk, or do I have to dress a certain way, or do I have to speak a certain way, look a certain way, all of that. So I think that,
Yeah.
just let people be. Everybody brings something into a company. Just let them be, bring their best, don't micromanage them, and the best stuff happens. So I think these have been some of our insights. We are not there yet where we can say, okay, we're 10 on 10 on all these things, but I think that consciousness is the first step towards solutioning. So I think the best organizations, or the organizations that will you know survive long and live long, I think, are those that where some of these work well. Otherwise, if you're so rigid, the market will move on, you get stuck. Or if you're like, no, I won't hire any different types of people in my company, only these kind of people get hired, then you're losing out on talent. So there's the downside of these things are much larger than it used to be.
As I was listening to you and I was thinking about, okay, what do you really need? You need leaders with a certain set of competencies. The ability to listen, the ability to be, to learn, to be open to learn, to learn new things very quickly, would be all very relevant. I know you've shared with me that in many forms and ways, not just as a mother, a partner, a daughter, and a daughter-in-law, you've been a caregiver in so many ways, a friend and colleague and manager. What do you think you have learned in your experience as a caregiver?
uh, what shall I say? I think one is not to make assumptions
Mm,
about knowing what the person you're caring for is experiencing or going through.
right.
Uh, and even thinking that you understand, because most of the times you can't. So assumptions has been a dangerous path to go down, to make assumptions. Second is, one needs to have a little bit of a thick skin.
Yeah.
Because caregiving, in its ideal sense, should come with it a lot of gratitude, should come with it a lot of, kind of recognition that you are
Yeah.
doing the caregiving.
Yeah.
Uh, and in a lot of times, it's taken for granted.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of a thick skin is needed. Otherwise, everything becomes, difficult. And caregiving is also for the long run. Caregiving is not something you do 5 minutes today and then, I need to look at it only next week. Um, So is one up for the long run? Is something that, I think mentally you need to build up that resilience for that. So I think these are some, yeah, some insights.
Sure. You mentioned that as a manager, you're a caregiver, and I find it interesting that you should say that you don't make assumptions. And as a CHRO, one of your tenets for your organization is also that you don't make assumptions about what people might want. So clearly, your experience of being a caregiver gets reflected in the kind of leader that you are, and what a beautiful thing that is. So, if you were to look at good managers or good leaders, do you think good managers or good leaders are caregivers to their teams?
Um, I think, the best managers and leaders I've seen are those that truly care
Hmm.
about their team members. It's not
Right.
about, okay, on an organizational chart, on a PPT, I have all these boxes and each box has some name on it and they just happen to report to me. I think there's a sense of investment that this is
Yeah.
my team. These are people who work for me, not resources. These are people who work for me. And their success is truly what reflects cumulatively as mine, as a leader. So I think that love for their team is very, very apparent in those that are best leaders versus others. um, and I think that sense of openness, that I don't have to blink for even a second before I can go and talk to my manager or leader, also I think distinguishes leaders from others. um, so yeah, I think those are it. And I think world is getting so complex, right? So I think if the leader or the manager doesn't add to that complexity, that itself
Is a
is
big
a big
deal.
deal for the team members, right? Otherwise, there's this term, right? I'm managing my manager, which is horrible. Those are not things that one should spend even a second managing. It's so many other things to
Yeah,
thought.
that
Yeah.
is true. I have been keen to draw a line between what are some of the skills and competencies that one acquires by virtue of having a caregiving experience, and that could be truly valuable to an organization. So, when I'm a caregiver, for example, you said that as an organization that is innovative, one of the first things that we need is our ability to listen. And a lot of people tell me that when you're a caregiver, your quotient of listening just simply goes up, even when you're a parent to children, right? And older adults, etc. So I'm saying that what is the linkage between organizations that are innovative, competencies that are required for organizations to be innovative, and what is it that caregivers bring to the table? What are your thoughts on this?
Um, so the aspects of listening definitely come with it. Patience, not to rush into solutions.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to take a breath, and especially in the startup space, the
Yeah.
pace at which we operate, it does take work to take a pause, because the natural tendency is to first act and then think. So that, just bringing a little bit of that, saying, hey, let's just take even 5 minutes, right, to just
Yeah.
think through this once more. Um, that would be one. I think the other is the aspect of seeing life in gray versus black and white.
Yeah.
Corporates and organizations, there's this sense of, okay, this is right, this is wrong, this is
Right.
correct, this is incorrect.
Yeah.
That's never the case, actually, right? It's always somewhere in between. And I'm not talking about integrity and the law and all of that. I'm just saying in other things. So I think the ability to see the different shades of life versus very, very kind of in a black and white fashion. I think that's another aspect that comes. And fourth, I mean, if I'm being a little philosophical, um, the idea of mortality. that we are only on the earth for a certain number of years, and what kind of a leader do you want to be, what kind of an organization do you want to be. I think when you're doing caregiving, especially for the elderly, this
Mm,
idea of mortality is very much there, right, front and center. um, I think I would say for me personally, it does come into my work that did I do something today that helped somebody, something, somewhere, because otherwise what's the point?
yeah, yeah. Well said. I think it is important to recognize and value that those individuals who come up with who have this life experience can bring in these competencies to the workplace, and these are valuable competencies to have.
Yeah.
And it is good to have a healthy mix, and if we can support individuals who are going through a phase of caregiving, then they are likely to be far more associated with the organization, more deeply associated with the organization. And it is always better to retain your people in the longer run than keep acquiring new people.
Yeah.
Maya, I would like for you to also, tell us from your experience that there are so many diverse groups of people that you have in your organization. There might be many young people who do not relate with the idea of caregivers or caregiving or any of this, or you might have that assumption. What would be your understanding of the youth or the young workforce? Yeah, let's start with that in terms of their relationship with some of these things. And two, what would you tell them?
So we have a very large percentage of
Yes.
young workforce, in the sense they have first jobs, second jobs, and young in age as well. Um, I think their perspectives, one, I have learned the hard way, is very very different from, let's say, mine,
Hmm.
because perspectives are formed out of experience, right, out of your life experiences, how you grow up, all of that. So um, the first thing I've kind of learned is not to put my lens on decision making that they are trying to look at, or solutioning that they are trying to do.
Right.
um, and that's it's a very very different perspective. Second, which I find very refreshing with our young workforce, is um, very little kind of, it's everything is out there,
Right.
what they think, what they feel, what they want to say. And I personally find that very refreshing. There's nothing left unsaid, and all of that, right? So I mean, what one hears and what they say, all that is, you may like it, you may not like it, but at least it's all there, right? It's very much straightforward. And the third, that is the acknowledgement, which is again very different from maybe our generation, is that work is just a very small part
Hmm.
of your life. It's not the part. Most probably, it's never the part. It's many other things that take that place. And so, to acknowledge that, and the fact that they bring something to the table, they may not stay for years and years, because that's not their intent. But when they are there, they get to bring what they can bring to the best of their ability. So very different from
Yeah.
earlier generations. Maybe every generation has said that about the
Yeah.
earlier one,
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
but
sure.
I think this is the delta of difference is probably the largest so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and also not to, uh, they are all very smart, very informed.
Yes.
There is no, they take informed decisions. There is nothing I can try and sell them. There's no concept of all of that. It's, you have straight discussions. Information is all on the table. There's no point in trying to posture a certain way. um, yeah, so all of those things are there, which I think is a good balance to how things used to be. And they bring in a very different and very good energy into the company.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to them about caregivers and caregiving?
I don't think it's even a topic right now in their lives. Um, I would just say probably observe and learn. There's a lot of caregiving going on around them. They may not be the caregiver, but there's actually probably a lot of people giving them care. They will be the recipient of a lot of care. And so I would just say when it's their time, they should give back, and they should pay it forward and do what needs to be done.
What a lovely note to kind of say that, yeah, I think I agree with you. We can all observe and learn and be grateful for the care that we are getting today,
Correct.
because we will not only need to give care to many people, we will need to receive care in a very different way as well.
True.
So I'd like to thank you for your time, Maya, and for such a brilliant, insightful conversation, and for everything that you do in so many other avatars, whether it is bringing women into the workforce, supporting your team, the Excel alumni, where I
Yes.
have seen you in action, and many other things which I will discover along the way. But thank you.
Thank you, Bhavna. I think this whole subject of caregiving, being caregivers, being a recipient of caregiving, um, it's still not fully there in the corporate consciousness. And the more you do, the more your team, does. It needs to start at least conversations, right? Conversations lead to introspection. Introspection hopefully leads to some action. So, thank you again for what you and your team also does. I know you have a very personal story to why you are in this space, and it's been very very lovely to see you continue to be at it and keep all of us conscious about caregiving.
Thank you. Thank you, Maya.